Okay, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order for Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission, Monday, August 19th. We'll start with roll call. Carrie Stuckey here. Shane Corden.
Here.
Kate Rose emailed she will not be able to make it. I think we're getting feedback. Okay, thank you. Eric Dubzinski.
Here.
Tom Jones.
Here.
Stefania Huerta also will not be able to make it today. Vicky Biggs, have we heard anything from her? Okay, she's not able to make it today. Nolan Saltonstall
Here.
and Councilmember Marshall.
Here.
Thank you. So we'll move on to item 2, approval of the agenda. Were there any questions or comments about today's agenda? Okay. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the agenda from July 8th.
Well, it's the agenda for today, item 2.
Approve the agenda for today.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's approved. We'll move on to approval of minutes for our regular meeting on July 8th, 2024.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from July 8th.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that approves. Then we'll move on to public comment. We did have several public comments emailed to us. They were displayed in the packet, and they were also displayed during the city council meeting. And then do we have any public comments today here with us that have signed up, or no? Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and move on then to item 5, our discussion items. First item is commission communications, and we have our communications director.
Come up here. All right. Okay. My name is Maggie Aguilar. I'm the communications officer for the city of Oak Harbor, and thank you for having me here today. Good morning to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission. We have had some conversations regarding some communication strategies for increasing awareness and participation in our boards and commissions just overall. In terms of this board, I would like to come up with a communication strategy and engagement plan to create some more awareness, and also just to identify the board's roles. How do we encourage some more participation in upcoming projects and initiatives? So some of the things that I would like to work with you is finding out ways to encourage this participation. This isn't a plan that's going to happen overnight, but it'll be a plan that's going to take some work, and it'll also take some discussions. I've already had a few discussions with some of you in terms of what are some of the strengths of the board, why you're on the board, things like that. And in order for us to increase those community connections, I feel like we need to start building some of those relationships internally, also with some of our residents and our local organizations and our stakeholders. I know it's a board that a lot of people are very interested in, and it's a subject that a lot of people are interested in, and I would like to work with everyone, including our Park and Rec director, to come up with a plan to be able to include all of you in that strategy. One of the other key messages that I would like to work on is highlighting the benefits of the Parks and Recreation and the board. What are some of the things that you are doing, some of the things that we could do better, some of the things that I can support you with, and in keeping our city officials informed, keeping our community organizations informed, and also our residents and our target residents, whether that's our families, what those age demographics look like, and how we can target those specific age groups and those target demographics. Some of the other things are, we're looking at our internal communications. What are our current processes? What are our goals for our current communications? How are we communicating with our board and our advisory board right now? Is everyone up to date with what Parks and Rec is doing, what is happening at City Hall? And I mean, it's just as simple things like, some of the initiatives that we're working on right now. For example, the Otter. Have you been a part of that discussion? Have you been a part of the discussion with the activity guide? Some of the things, I would like to know what your strengths are so that we can work together and create some of those plans so that there's that line of communication that's open. Some of the other things that we have talked about are some newsletters, the city website, coming up with different ways to keep the website engaging, keep the website up to date and informed with all of the new flyers, all the artwork, anything that has been updated. I would love to see that on the website promptly. And what else do we have? We talked a little bit about partnerships and partnering with some of our local nonprofits, businesses, other organizations, sponsoring events, things like that, and monitoring that type of engagement. One of the things that I would love to see this board do is monitor the engagement in terms of tracking what our not only our demographics, but what our metrics look like, what the feedback looks like from the community, because that way it'll be easier for me to gauge how that participation can be more fulfilled and refining the messaging a little bit better. Adjusting some of the strategies based on the data that we find. If somebody on the board is really great with numbers and metrics, I would love to work with that person to be able to come up with a plan to strategize and get some of the programs out on socials, for example, and just increase our outreach methods to improve the effectiveness of this board. Overall, I just would love to see a strategy put together where there isn't a gap between the board, City Hall, Parks and Rec, and that way it'll be easier for us to be completely transparent with the public and to be able to create different strategies to promote some of the things that we're doing, because we're doing these wonderful things. Now, how do we just promote all of those things? And also, a lot of the questions that we're getting, for example, with some of the initiatives that are during council meetings, we are getting a lot of engagement. So how do we inform our residents and the public before we can, we get all of the engagement? And that way, it's a positive message, and I would love to be able to work with you to create that positive messaging moving forward, so that way our community is informed ahead of time rather than, afterwards. So I appreciate your time today. I look forward to working with you on this plan. These are just some of the ideas and strategies that I've come up with for now, but again, I'll be working with all of you and our director as well. If you have any questions, I would love to speak with you.
Thank you, Maggie. Do we have any comments or questions right off the bat? Tom, did you have any? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So Maggie, would you like
Yes.
us to just kind of brainstorm and come back at our next meeting, and we'll have?
Yeah, I actually have it all planned out in terms of just a timeline and so we can work on that together, and maybe we can do a joint meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that would be
Okay.
great. Thank you
Okay,
so much.
wonderful, of course, thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Okay, so let's go ahead and move on then to item B, which is ordinance 1999. I think we just wanted to give an update of what was passed by city council. So I don't know if, Brian, you had anything you wanted to say about that first?
There was a lot of public comment, a lot of discussion with council. Ultimately, they did pass the ordinance. I can throw it up here for you. So effectively, the ordinance amends section 130.010, removing the general election requirement for disposition of public lands.
Yeah, so my understanding of it is essentially the election requirement is removed as long as there is a one-to-one land swap or improvements to the park valued at 150% of market value, or it is land being sold or swapped for infrastructure purposes. My understanding then, Eric Marshall, maybe you can help with this. If there's any parkland that will just be sold, that will still go to an election, is that correct? Without a one-to-one swap or a 150% value improvement?
That is correct. Any outright sale of parkland still will require a public vote, yes.
Okay, do we have any comments, questions, discussion on that? Okay, so just wanted to make sure everyone was on the same page with that. We'll go ahead and move on then to item C, which is Imagine request letter.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having us here. My name's Christine Pace, and
Mrs. Zielinski.
I am the president of Imagine a Permaculture World, which I'm sure everybody is just really getting to know Imagine recently. We've been around for 12 years. We are here to discuss how we started 12 years ago, just over, how things have been in the interim, what permaculture is, and where we would like to see the future of our park. So,
What I did to make it easier for everybody is I'd like to pass out some
Here.
packets, okay? Okay,
Thank you.
okay, thank you. And you need one, so we follow through. So the first page of the packet, and we're not going to go through it all, but I just want you to have it, to pause on it yourselves and look at it. But basically, this park is unique in the sense that it is permaculture, okay? And permaculture is basically supporting sustainable systems, creating a whole here that will eventually go on and require less and less. And not that it doesn't still require what it needs right now is cleaned up and sharp edges and paths and beauty, but the trees themselves are doing great. They're producing a lot of food, and people are using them. So that's the first page is the basics. The second page, though, if you look at, kind of open it up. It's from the top.
So this is just a general overview of how our concept of Imagine, what everybody or a lot of people refer to as our community garden. Again, it's based on permaculture ethics, and the concept is that it's not going to be a park that looks much like other parks. It's a food-producing system, an example of how to have green areas in cities. And we did ours very specifically. There was a very specific design to the whole thing. And we knew that it would take years for maturity, and we're close to it. Okay.
Okay, and so there's a list underneath this colored graphic. The main thing I want you to note about this is see how close the trees are planted to each other? That's what's different about parks and orchards and things. This idea is that the ground space below each tree is a lot more available, and different roots go down to different spaces, and so you can actually plant more things in a tighter space. And that's what we are doing at Imagine. So there'll be a little bit about what trees we have there. Let's see what we got here. Okay, so just basically understand the concept of permaculture. Hold on a second here. Okay, so let's just go to the page. There's a page in here that says, "What is a food forest?" Because that's what we are. We're a park. Hank Neidham years ago believed in us enough to give us this opportunity to become a food forest. He knew we would be a park, but he also knew we were going to be a food forest. Okay, it's at the top of the page, it says tree ordinances which study the trees we have and plan for new plantings. And it just, we can just do this together. You got it? So what is a food forest is right in the middle of the page? Okay, got it. Okay, so we began with nothing, absolutely nothing. We just took cardboard, pictures are in there also of what it actually looked like, put wet cardboard on the ground, put on
Grass clippings?
grass clippings, and then some mulch on top of that, and let it sit for a while. Then we came back and started to place our designs of where our trees were going to be. We studied our trees so that we know that they're pretty much all healthy, although we'll share a little bit with that with you. I think you'll be able, I don't know if you want to read this or if we should take your time to share how we actually designed it, but it did take quite a few years and lots of volunteer time, and it is what it is today. What would you like to add?
I'd like to say that we were grateful for the opportunity through Hank Needham at the time to just have this piece of land to utilize, and we're grateful for it. It's a little disheartening thinking that it may go away, but we are pretty positive people and believe that we can all work together to move forward and keep Imagine. It doesn't seem with very mature trees that a land swap would be a functional idea for this type of garden. If it were really small perennials and annuals and pots, then I could see that being uprooted and moved. But we're talking about mature trees that have provided a lot of food over the years. And so we came here with a lot of solutions. And we've contacted you, the council, and Parks and Rec a while back with a letter, which we don't happen to have right now because we gave them all away. At any rate,
I'll throw it up here for you.
Okay.
thank you. We understand that any park, all parks, have their own specific needs, and here we are. Thank you. I can't read it, I didn't bring my glasses, but I can remember basically. We were hoping to get Imagine really a little more involved, have the city more involved, because it's reached a point where we need more regular maintenance, less giant volunteer hours like we did 10, 11, 12 years ago. We would have groups of 30 or more people out there several days a week, working industriously like amazing ants together for a great cause. And we're now at a point of, like I said, maintenance and tidying it up. And we would like it to look a bit more like a city park. We think Windjammer is gorgeous. We took pictures of the paths there are amazing. The information boards are wonderful, and they are something that we, as our own board, have been talking about for an incredibly long time. We haven't had the right person on the board to go down that path. At any rate, if you can read that.
Okay, so what we're asking for is, in order to kind of step it up and become more a formal park, is to maybe decrease the compost piles there and work with the city, because they have compost, and they could bring to us a couple times a year, and then they would pick up at certain times, so that we just don't have anything sitting around like that, okay? And then we really need to define a nice edge, a really clean edge. And that's where we need city maintenance to help us with that, okay? And then we have said no to the third item here, which was create concrete walking paths, because it really isn't very good for the tree roots, but we could come up with something better, something soft, but something that doesn't affect the trees. Okay, then the next one was provide benches, and we love the benches at Windjammer Park. And dealing with the homeless issue, that would really be a great bench, because they couldn't lay down on the bench, but they could sit there. And we really encourage the homeless to eat there. We just don't want them to live there, if you know. Okay. And then a special nod to help with irrigation.
Yes.
We definitely need, and maybe we can coordinate it with what is happening at Howell Romali, because we're right next door, so we could maybe work together. and develop information boards. There was a young woman who came from the Garden Club when we were at our last meeting, and she said they have too many elder volunteers, but they have a lot of money. And I thought, wow, this is where we could get the information board, and they would be interested in helping us do that. So that's just a thought, take that off the plate.
In regards to the information boards, there are always so many questions about Imagine, and I'm sure most people here wasn't even aware of it until there was a concept of a hotel going there, and prior to that, a low-income housing. Information boards that we're talking about are, again, we really would like Imagine to take on a look of a city park, and we could answer a lot of questions with these information boards. And
Yes.
what else? There was another important thing.
Well, that's all we have on there. So I guess that's it. What I'd like to pass out to you now is actually, Brian, you asked for the number of trees.
Oh, let's read that first.
Oh, okay, you can read it.
As you can imagine, the number's gone up and down a little bit. We have 57 edible trees in there. We have 21 different berry plants, and I do actually believe that that number's a little higher. We have 3 grapes that have taken over the pergola. And that was planted specifically to, of course, hold up the grapes, but to provide shade and food dripping down. We have 3 hardy kiwis in there. We believe that they're all of the same sex, which is why they're not producing yet. We do have a few other plants in there that we realize it's time to remove. One of them is called the Elaeagnus ebengai. It's a nitrogen-fixing plant, and again, our garden was, the food forest was planted specifically with nitrogen-fixing plants dotted around to care for and feed other trees. It has turned out to be a place where a lot of people sleep, so that being said, we would like it, we can remove it ourselves, or with the help of the city, we would love to. There are also, I believe, 3 plum trees that have not really produced that well. They're pretty large. They're a little sickly, but that would be another way of opening up Imagine. And we truly just look forward to working with everybody, and we believe that when we all work together, we've got nothing but solutions. And so we're just grateful for the opportunity to be here and speak with you as well.
Thank you so much.
Is that it? Thank you so much. Here's a map that we can pass around if you'd like to
I gave
gander
you a
it.
small map.
Oh, good, okay.
Thank you.
Does anybody have questions?
Any questions?
This is really interesting and helpful, thank you.
Thank you.
I've seen the space, I never really understood what it was,
Right.
the purpose.
Information
I
boards
still-
would
I
have been
still-
incredibly helpful to you.
Yeah, I still need to read through this probably to better understand.
If at any point, any of you would like to have a personal tour through Imagine, meet and speak at any other time, please contact us. Our information is in that paperwork, I'm guessing.
I surely hope it is. If it isn't, it's on this board, but we'll make sure.
We love talking about permaculture. We love Imagine. We would really like for it to stay for our whole community, really. So please contact us if you have any other, yes?
So why aren't you maintaining it? I mean, the idea was.
Pardon me?
Why isn't your organization maintaining it? It sounds like it was
Oh, that's-
your concept, right? And based upon the agreement that I read in here, all of these things that you're asking the city to now do is in the agreement that you're supposed to do. And so why is that not taking place? And then why is it now being put on the city?
Yes, we both have an answer to this. So why aren't we maintaining it? And is this, how far back are we talking? Because it's been very well maintained, most of it's 12 years. In the last year or two, specifically since COVID, I think all of our lives have changed pretty dramatically. And Imagine has taken a toll with that. We've lost volunteers, we've lost some board members, And so we do maintain, not to the degree that we would like it to be maintained.
That's what we're asking. Let me ask. I'd like to just offer also an answer to that, is that our board members are also like the Garden Club aging. It's really hard to be a volunteer when, at a certain point, and to come regularly. And we are recognizing that. That's why we originally wrote this letter, because we'd like to keep it, it's really, potential is there. The trees are fine, everything's there. We just need to work together. And now we became an adopt-a-park at a certain point, which is sort of a step into where the city's saying, okay, let's work together. So we're hoping that that can happen, not to say that we can't have more organized volunteers if we're all working together. There might be more excitement to come back and work on this.
Do you see how that becomes problematic for a city, though, where it's your concept, you create this, and then
Right.
you say, well, we don't have the manpower to maintain it anymore, so we want you to maintain it, when we have a Parks Department that's already tasked with 20-some-odd parks that have had deferred maintenance over the years. And so to try to then take on additional projects that were not planned for, were not budgeted for, just simply because you can't maintain your volunteer base, that's problematic.
May I
for a
step in?
city. Yeah, absolutely.
We aren't looking for problems, and we are not asking for the Parks Department to completely take over. What we've discussed is a way for us to maintain it more easily and readily. The help that we would like is with irrigation. We would like it to represent other parks a little bit more, and we would like to work with the city with that. As far as actual paths, some seating, and information boards, with those things and irrigation, it'll be infinitely easier for us to maintain.
But the ask is to clean up the edges, to.
Okay.
No, I'm reading your letter. I mean, that
I
was the
understand.
ask. And to clean up the edges, to remove mulch, to bring in new mulch, to help with the watering. I mean, so that there is a significant ask when our Parks Department is already.
I actually disagree with you. So, as far as cleaning up the edge, what we're specifically referring to is a conversation that we did have with Brian a while back. There are green landscaping containers, and where they used to be brought to us, dropped off, and then readily picked up, and then that stopped happening. We had a work party last year where all of our trees got pruned, and we were grateful that the city parks happened to be stopping by and making a fun video and helped us prune. And the concept then was to throw everything on the back edge, and they'll be by to pick it up. It's been over a year, so that's specifically what we're referring to, is just cleaning up the debris that would normally go into a container. That is not a big ask. Helping to set up with irrigation is not the same as saying, hey, city parks, can you please come down and manually water every week?
Okay. What do you intend to do? So the hotel project, whether it gets built, has an easement through that parkland.
Yes, the easement is located, as you look at your paperwork, on the far right side, and we planned for that being an eventuality possibly.
So that 15 feet on the, let's see, that would be the east side, that 15 feet has never been planted with anything.
Trees.
Any trees at all. It's just always been open for whoever.
Annuals.
Yeah. Understood, but driving through there, it's going to become a sight impediment. It's going to make it difficult for people to see when turning, correct?
I don't think so.
What will? I'm sorry, what will?
Having those trees there will make it difficult to see turning in and out of there.
I absolutely disagree. Because I'd like to show you, if you please come down, you
No,
can.
I
look.
walk by there every day. I mean.
Okay,
it's-
well, we do have flags that we have marked the edge of the easement.
Okay.
And I would say the closest tree to that edge would be a cherry tree, and it's a good 10 feet away from there.
Okay.
So there's plenty of room to see.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
So it sounds like there's a formal agreement, written agreement at this point between the city and your group?
Yes, we are an adopt-a-park,
Okay.
and we have been for at least 11 of our 12 years.
Is that accessible to us somewhere on?
So, thank you so much for your
Thank you so much
presentation.
for your time. I really appreciate this.
Yeah, just a few clarification points. I think when it comes to sight lines, that would be something that would be investigated at the time, correct? So that's not something we have to really worry about at the moment. Debris collection, so I guess in the letter you're asking to increase the formal appearance, so it really is the ask to have like a yard waste bin available?
Yes, when we've had them accessible to us in the last few years, we've gone over and taken some from Howler Millie that were full of garbage, emptied the garbage,
Okay,
and carried it home and paid to throw it away on our own.
Okay.
And then filled them with debris and put them back out on the sidewalk. So we would like that regular maintenance. Also, just the debris that's in the back, if that could be removed, we could really clean up our edge back there as well.
okay. So is Brian or Brandon or Eric, is that something that is reasonable to provide a yard waste bin for Imagine in addition to Howler Malley, whatever is there?
Yeah, we can absolutely provide a yard waste bin for Imagine. I think, and I might be talking out of turn here, I would imagine that the yard waste bin, if we can get on a schedule.
Wonderful.
That we can know whenever that's going out, and I can get that on solid waste schedule so that it's not, if we can keep that around the shed so that it's not getting utilized in illegal dumping, then I think we can do that, and then just schedule a day that we can pick that up. I will have to look for costs. I don't know that we are being charged right now for solid waste.
Okay. And the debris behind the many big limbs and things that really are rough looking, and because you look right down the pergola and there's this big pile of rough stuff, that would be nice if we could get that out.
Yes,
Okay.
that is on the list as I spoke
Okay.
to you guys.
Thank you.
about.
You guys are great, we appreciate
And
it.
then maybe there will be a talk sometime about irrigation. I mean, just somehow connecting to Howler Malley. We're both parks, we both need a little water, you know.
That was actually my next question. In the agreement, it does say existing water service for irrigation solely for the establishment, and then it says that Imagine would develop the garden to catch and collect rainfall to eliminate the need for water to sustain the garden. Is that?
That was a discussion that we had quite a while back, and it had to do with our shed roof. And I can't remember the specifics, but talking with Hank Knightum at the time, it seemed to be not a feasible thing to do. It was more of a dream of ours. And I can't remember exactly why, but it had to do with some sort of parks regulations at the time. I can't remember. So what we did in lieu of that was Hank and city park people at the time did connect to the Howler Malley water, and we do have a spigot. And there was talk about extending on that once we formalized where our trees were going to be for some sort of irrigation.
Okay, so I guess my question is, has there been any exploration of other ways to do rain collection to supplement that?
There isn't, however, well, there is, and it's in your information packet. It's called digging swales, which we are absolutely not opposed to, and we would really like to do.
Which is a catching of the water that comes down, so it depends on how much rainfall we have.
Sure.
It does work, yeah.
Okay. And so I guess my other question then would be more for Brian and Brandon. Maintenance-wise, are any of these asks feasible for the city to help with in any way?
Good question.
Everything's feasible with enough funding and resources, right?
So with what we have now for funding and resources, is it feasible or is that burdensome?
It's definitely not on the, we're not, this is not on my schedule to do. So as of right now, we've got an Adopt-A-Park partnership with them. I need to go through all of these Adopt-A-Parks, and I think that we're going to probably roll something different out. The Adopt-A-Park program right now is not currently functioning. There's people on paper that have adopted the parks, but that kind of
Not since like 2020, 2021.
it's kind of fallen by the wayside, and that's probably our lack of managing has a lot to do with that. I would say we probably dropped the ball, and then we have not been getting reached out. So I need to redo that whole Adopt-A-Park agreement. That would be my concern, kind of like what Eric Marshall had said, is just we have this agreement in here. We've got our scope of what we think is going to happen, and now we're asked to go up and above. That's my only concern.
Sure. I guess it sounds like, does this agreement just need to be completely renegotiated then, at this point? Before we can really make any decisions on what we can help with and what we can't?
Can I jump in for a second? Doesn't it seem like this is going to kind of fall under the scope of some of the work that we're going to do with our Parks Master Plan? I mean, in regards to agreements with organizations for some of this stuff, and that when we think about Adopt-A-Park and all of that stuff, it might fall under the purview of how we do our master plan, and we can kind of redo this whole agreement because it is sort of dead in the water. I mean, being an organization that has one with Fort Nugent and there's no real relationship there, and then we can come back and readdress whether or not we're even going to continue to engage in these types of agreements or what they look like, and then we can start to figure out how funding occurs and all of that stuff. I mean, I hate to say let's wait for this other thing, but I do feel like if we start redoing some of this stuff ahead of time, then we might find that it doesn't actually fit into the vision that we're casting when we actually go through the whole systematic process of the master plan. And that would be my only concern, not only for this situation, but just for all the other parks that were going to be involved, because that really does need revitalized, and we need to make sure that we do it in a manner that's equitable for the parks and the usage and the organizations involved.
Makes sense.
It's an option. So, Imagine has come forward with a request to the city. We are looking for some kind of motion on this. This is a request that has some capital project to it, as well as an ongoing, perpetual cost with utilities. If we put in a sprinkling water system, what's going to be the water utility increase cost to the department? Some of these other asks are simple enough to do, but there is an impact there, right? So,
It seems judicious to me that we do some of the cleanup, knowing that there probably is going to be a mess made down in that area with some sort of development coming, which might make it easier in which to navigate sort of trenching and things that would require for irrigation, backflow preventers, all that kind of stuff. And we can address some of that at a later date, but getting the cleanup done and some of the odds and ends, especially like removing some old waste and some of the other stuff that just would help beautify the area, I think that sounds very reasonable to me. Coordinating as far as other debris removal on a regular basis kind of seems like a good idea, but having a coordination maybe with special times at which that removal occurs, kind of like what we do at Fort Nugent when some of the thinning happens and the removal of invasive species and those kinds of things. To me, that seems like a better idea for now until we can develop a wider plan, and also if we're able to decide that this is a good idea for irrigation in that area, we can do it when we're already making a mess in that area anyway, and maybe lower the cost in order to make it more cost effective.
Yeah, and I think our staff are happy to partner with Imagine to do, support them with a volunteer cleanup kind of a day, right? I will point out that we don't actually have a formalized land lease agreement with Imagine. We have kind of a community garden rules that Imagine has signed off on in their use of the space, but it's not really a formalized agreement. It's not signed by the city. There's no like indemnification or other things we'd have in an agreement as far as here's the responsibilities of the organization, here's the responsibilities of the city. So that's something that we'll want to put together as well.
And I think that's pretty indicative of just the way in which Parks and Rec sort of worked when it was a thing rather than a department with director and staff. And I think in order to fold all of these things we're doing into sort of the modern era, we need to have those kinds of agreements to make sure that this is understood. So when things happen, you know, where staff is cut and God willing, no more pandemic issues that cause those kinds of things. But assuming they do, we have agreements in which we know what's going to take place rather than these handshake things that have worked in the past, but they don't really work now in the modern age of parks and
Right.
recreation in Oak Harbor or in the world.
And I think the Parks Division didn't really have the resources at the time. You know, I think they liked the idea of an Adopt a Park program. Yes, let's have volunteers come and help out with this, but that does take some administration and management, working with the volunteer groups and keeping up on those agreements, because people move in and out, especially since probably 80% of them were Navy groups, which, you know, switch out every few years already anyway. So like Brandon said, it's something that, that the Parks Department, it just sort of dissolved several years ago. And something that we're looking to revitalize and create a new program.
So I think it's also important to mention that council is talking about moving this entire thing. So I don't know how much we want to invest in it with the concept that we may be moving it. And so I, for one, am not in favor of putting more on our park staff that's already kind of overburdened with trying to years of deferred maintenance. And then one of the things that we've talked about is recouping our costs on some of these things. So yard waste is still something that we pay for. Water is something we pay for. So these are all things that are an expense to the city that we have not budgeted for, that we've not planned for. So I think those are things, important things to take into consideration when looking at this.
Yeah, I guess that's a little bit my concern too with it being up in the air. Is it going to be moved? Where is it going to be moved to? I would hate to, you know, invest all this money in a space that's just going to be moved in a year or 2 years. So I'm a little hesitant to move forward with a big project, a big cleanup project, a big investment in irrigation, until we kind of have a better idea of that. That's kind of where I'm at right now. I don't know that we're necessarily opposed to some of these things. I think it's just difficult right now, not knowing the future of that space, if that makes sense.
Oh, go ahead. When and how will the determination of the possible demise of Imagine be made?
So my understanding is the developer will have to make a development agreement with the city. That will come before council. It will be open for public hearing, for public comment, and then city council will approve or deny that development agreement. But that's something I don't know the timeline on without knowing the developer and where they're at in their process. So I don't know that we have an
Okay,
answer
come on,
unless Eric
Mary.
Marshall does.
Come on over.
Yeah, you can come up.
As a taxpayer here in Oak Harbor, I'm curious, how will that be advertised to the public so that they can come and make a comment? And I just want to say I really appreciate the positive, solution-oriented approach. I think it can't be underestimated how the public feels about their city parks.
Yeah, as far as notifying the public, in the ordinance, it specifies specifically, I think, 10 days, at least 10 days ahead of the public hearing needs to be notified in the public newspaper. What I would like to see is a little bit more than that. That's why we're working with our communications director. So I guess right now the answer is for sure in the newspaper at least 10 days ahead of time, but hopefully we will have a plan for a little bit above and beyond that in terms of communication.
Yeah, and to that end, I think when we made our vote to say that we thought city council should move forward with this was based on the fact and the trust that we were going to improve communication, to give better opportunity for a dialogical approach to making these decisions and having places where people could have a better chance to speak. So it wouldn't feel like stuff was, people were unaware that these were happening. So we're really optimistic that we're going to do a great job, and that the deadlines where we have to do something won't be the time when it actually gets done. It's not going to be left to the last minute in that sense, that we're going to be a little more proactive, try to get this information out as soon as possible so that a better chance for people to be aware of when these conversations will be taking place. Because it's really important. It's really important to serve the trust of the public well, and to have a chance for people to speak and have dialogue on this matter, all these matters regarding parks. And I think dialogue is what's really needed right now to come to these positive solutions rather than sort of reactive cynicism that we kind of have right now because the trust isn't built yet. And this is really the effort, is to create greater trust so we can do this really well.
And I'd like to offer, we would like to create trust also. If we could get it, imagine at this point, to just get cleaned up a little bit, get some of the yard waste out, get more volunteers involved, let people, we will do that on our part, but we will get more people involved so we can get an edge. So when the Hilton comes in, food forests are unique. San Francisco has 15 of them, and they're honoring them, and they know that they're the future to go to. And we have one, and it needs us, it's a community thing. So I really have hope and trust that we'll put a little effort into holding on to this before we even consider letting it go. And thank you.
I think we're at the time, maybe if we need to make a recommendation that we probably should. And is that what's next here, Brian? Are we looking for a recommendation for some kind of action from the commission?
Yes, please, since there is an ask,
Okay.
and the ask has
Yeah.
a
And so-
resource.
I guess the recommendation that I would like to make, and see how the rest of the commission feels about it, is that we kind of do just the cleanup stuff, but in partnership with a volunteer day, so it's not just a staff project, but that we find a time that works with Imagine, that they can gather a significant core of volunteers, and then we get rid of the messes that are existing there at this point. The compost, the extra trimmings, the stuff that's kind of uglying up the park and isn't going to be able to be used to feed the trees and plants that are there, and get that done, and then worry about larger projects at a later date when we have a better understanding of what's going to take place there and nearby.
I agree with that recommendation. If we could have one kind of work day in partnership together, I think that's the answer for right now, just because it is a little bit of a question mark in the future, what it's going to look like and where it's going to be exactly. So yeah, I would agree with that recommendation. Do we have any other discussion? Do we need to make a motion for that, or just?
Yeah, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
All right. I guess I'll make a motion that Parks and Rec work with Imagine to find a volunteer day in which staff can assist the removal of the unsightly compost waste and trimmings.
Do we have a second? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, that passes unanimously.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And Carrie, I'll just add just around the questions about the Hilton project. So from my understanding right now, it's still in pre-application. We don't have anything formalized yet. They've talked and shared with us a conceptual design from like a year ago. We gave some feedback on it and have not seen an update with it since it's sort of been on hold for quite a while now. As soon as we hear that they are preparing an actual application to come to the city, at that point, when we know, well, this is what they're asking for, if the project does affect any of the parkland in any way, we'll have more discussion with the commission. We'll bring you guys in, and if it impacts Imagine in the permaculture area, we'll also bring them in as well. Discuss what that looks like, what the ask is. We'll look at alternative solutions. We'll look at options. We'll discuss all the scenarios at that point. Once we have something solidified of, well, what is it that they want to do?
Sure, that makes sense. Thank you so much.
That would be great.
All right.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to item D, pickleball design.
Hey, Don, do we have you on?
I'm here. Can everybody hear me?
We can hear you. We got it.
Great. Well, I'm Don Campbell, and we've met before. I'm the lead consultant with RWD Landscape Architects, and I'm here to, Brian and I are going to update you today on where we stand with the pickleball complex design, what's been going on, and what the next steps are. So in council's packet, there are 2 exhibits. They are the concept plans, concept 1 and 2, showing where we are, what has happened since we had the public meeting, where we are on the design and how it has evolved. So now I can see that we've got concept 1 in front of me on the video. There are 2 things going on each of these concepts. One is the development of the pickleball design, the playing area and the courts, the design. The other, the north or at the top of the screen between the residence and the pickleball courts, you can see what looks like parking spaces, which is what they are. We've had the comments about if we lose the area, the rest of the part of the park to the school district, what do we do about parking? How can we address the parking? And one of the things that our team plans on doing, we have a pre-application meeting with the city scheduled for September 3rd. And what we did was we tried to provide 2 options for additional parking in case we lost some. This is parking that would not require an entrance off the end of the neighborhood adjacent to us. But we don't know what the city is going to say about that. But we just know that we do have space for additional parking. Concept number 1, where you see the that you're looking at right now, that particular option adds 40 spaces, but the spaces to the left, some of that work is within the right-of-way, so it's not all on the property. Concept 2, which shows the other layout that is between the residences and the park, that is on our property. And so the next step on this is to say, well, we have space, and to go to the city and say, what happens if we do this? What are the issues, and is this even possible? So that was something that we expanded on as far as our scope of work. We thought it was important to add in and investigate it. So that's where we stand with the parking. Now, back to the pickleball courts, we have revised the layout based on input from the public. And what we heard loud and clear from the public, number 1 was they want the courts covered. And that's probably not likely here, but we are going to look at what a cost might be if you covered some of them, or you covered them like, you see we have the layout, we've got 4 2-court banks, and could you cover half of them, 2 of them? Could you cover them all? What would it take? The other item that we heard loud and clear from the public was they prefer the fences that separate the courts, but they would like more space between the courts and those fences. So we widened the courts, the distance between the courts and the fences between the courts. That's, if you're looking at the plan, in between each 2 courts, you see a black line with X's on it. That graphic represents a 4-foot fence that prevents the balls from running across the other courts. So we widened the distance between the courts and the fence an extra foot. Instead of 7, we widened it to 8. You can go up to 9 or 10, but what that does, the more we widen the courts, the closer we get to the residences, and the closer we get to the walkway down to the bottom, that's on the edge of the multi-purpose field. So in trying to work with the grading and the design and the layout, we settled on 8 feet. So that's why we didn't go 10, we didn't go 9, because we're also looking at maybe having parking up in along that northeast border. The other option that we heard was when we first presented the options to the public, we had some non-playing areas in between the 4 banks of the courts. And what we heard from the public was, we really just want one area where we can all gather, where you can have messages and a kiosk and sort of a gathering space. And we would like that to be in an area where you can see what's going on all the courts. So concept number 1, well, we got concept number 1 right here. We provided that central area in between the courts to where we have a gathering area. It's more of a social area with a covered shelter and sitting areas. And then the courts themselves are oriented around it, so everyone can see what's going on. It's more of a social layout. Concept number 2, we put that same gathering area up towards, if we did the parking, we put it closer up towards the parking. We could also have this central area here, and that depends on that depends on feedback that we get from you and from Parks. One thing that's not shown on here is the hitting wall. We were just putting this plan together for the pre-application meeting, but there will be a hitting wall, a practice wall, that is not included as part of the courts. It will be separate, and that's not shown on this plan. So that's a brief update. I'm available for questions, and Brian, if I missed anything, you can add to that.
Let's see here. Yeah, I think you covered it. So basically, from the feedback, widening the court, spacing to the edge by 8 feet. Made sure the courts are wider. The fencing around the primary entrance for option 1 from the football field with a centrally located area for viewing. Gathering and a kiosk, and then option 2 has a gathering area closer to the proposed parking, like showed. I think we covered anything. Any questions from the commission at this point?
I do. A couple of questions. What is I'm having trouble kind of figuring, I think I got it. The distance between the courts, in other words, the corridors, if you want to call it that, it looks like where the shelter is, it goes up to 30 feet between the courts. I don't know if that's in both concepts or not. And then it looks like it's 15 feet corridors otherwise. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And one of the things we need to review with our pre-application meeting is emergency vehicle access and emergency access to the courts and what's going to be required. We don't anticipate there needing to be vehicle access, but again, that's something that we're going to have to address, and we will find that out in our pre-application meeting. We do want to provide space for maintenance vehicles, whether that's a Gator or a pickup truck, and then just have enough space, wide enough, make that corridor wide enough to where you could put benches at the courts for folks to sit on, and still allow your maintenance vehicles to pass and not not shut everything off.
I think this is good as planned from other facilities that I've seen, so I'm happy with that.
Thank you.
And then another question on the fencing. So it looks like, and I had asked this question before, that each set of 2 courts has an 8-foot fencing completely around the 2 courts. That's correct?
That's correct.
Is it possible to have only the exterior fencing, in other words, around the whole complex, to be 8 foot, and the fencing between the courts to be 4 feet?
That's the way it's, and I apologize for not mentioning that. That's the way it's set up now. The court separation fences are always 4 feet.
Let me rephrase that, I'm sorry. Yeah, I understand that between the 2 courts within the 1-2 set area, but between the sets of 2 courts, like where the corridors are, is it possible to put 4-foot fencing where the corridors are, 8-foot fencing around the other 2 or 3 sides? I only say that because it's easier for viewing, and I understand that well, I don't understand, that windscreens would probably be put on the outside 2 fencing lines, not the interior between the corridors. Is that right? So,
No, I think
Right.
so
go ahead.
the screening would be around the outside of the complex, if you want to call it that.
No, I think the screening's on all the 8-foot fencing surrounding the 2 court structures.
Okay, well, then that brings up, 1, is that necessary? And 2, is that you're not going to be able to see through the windscreens if you're viewing, the competitions on all
Yeah,
courts.
so you get what he's saying, Don, like talking about
Yeah.
as a whole complex, like one, I don't know, even though they're separated, treating it as kind of one exterior fence, right?
Yeah, I mean, it would be the same kind of idea, but it's not set up that way.
I'm happy to clarify. And you bring up a good point that maybe we don't need 8-foot fence in between the courts. If we were to do what, like we would say, a perimeter 8-foot fence around on the outside, that's something we can look at. It just depends on, how, if it's less than 8 feet, say it's 4 feet around, on those inside the courts, along that where the walkway is in between the courts. If those are 4 feet, I think you're going to have a lot of balls that are going to go over the fence there. I would not recommend going to 4 feet because of that. But I also want to clarify that the windscreen does not go all the way around the courts. We would determine what the prevailing wind direction is. And as I've mentioned before, I think we all know the winds kind of swirl around in that site. So it's difficult to really say what time you're out there where the winds are. But right now we would designate just on the outside for the windscreens, because if we put them on the inside, then as you mentioned, you can't see, you can't view what's going on. So we would keep them to the outside. We just need to determine which direction that is. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I would prefer the 4-foot fences on the corridor areas, but if it's 8 foot and it's not windscreen, that would work.
Okay. Yeah, I'd keep it at 8 feet, because I've seen lots of folks where it's 4 foot on the ends, particularly on the ends. I've seen the balls bounce over 4 feet pretty easily. And then you're chasing the balls downhill, down towards the multipurpose field. And we're already running around enough. I prefer not to make everybody chase balls down the hill.
Okay, thank you. Now, on the coverings for the courts, as you mentioned, it's desirable, but we also know it's going to be very expensive. If you put, one, can you prep an area for future possibility of building those covers? And two would be, do the covers, the ones that you showed on your chart at the public hearing, or the public input meeting, they looked really nice. But do they require lighting or not? I mean, once you jump into lighting and electrical for lighting, it becomes a much bigger project, as opposed to if you could somehow create an overhead for, say, 2 courts without lighting. Is that feasible or not?
I think that's a value judgment that's to be made by parks in terms of in terms of the of scheduling. You can, if the park is open during daylight hours and you want the courts covered to extend the season to play, and you're out playing when it's wet and rainy, then you don't need lighting. But if you want to extend the play, after the sun goes down, and we're talking about the dark days, if you want to extend the playing past, say, 3:30 or 4, before we can't see anything for a short time, then you need lighting. So you don't need lighting, but that is an operations and scheduling question.
Okay, thank you. I have my own opinion, but that clarifies. Thanks.
That's true. We all, and I don't want to
We
give
wanna
mine.
hear
I
your
want to be
opinions.
factual about where that decision is to be made. You can cover them without lighting. You can. We are working, meeting with the contractor who built the indoor or the covered structure that y'all mentioned to us, and we're looking at what it would take to set those up for being covered. And the way we've got this design laid out, we won't need to. You wouldn't need to put in any infrastructure to begin with in phase 1 to cover these. And so I think what we're talking about is you could cover these without having to put in any infrastructure in phase 1.
Okay, got it. Brian, did you say you wanted my opinion?
Yeah. That's what we're
Okay, this is
presenting
just
for.
me. I'm not speaking for anybody else. I think to cover 2 courts and maybe 4 courts would be really good. Lighting, to me, that's unnecessary. During the winter hours, when it gets dark at 4 o'clock, it's too damn cold to want to go out there and play anyway, my opinion. Although people may do that. When I went over and looked at the facility at, on the other side, what's that called over there? Yeah, Mount Vernon area.
Skagit College.
Yeah. Well, take a look at the lighting they got in there. It's massive. I mean, I can imagine the utility cost, let alone the maintenance costs of getting up and down to those light fixtures. So I'm not sure that that's necessary. Anyway, that's just my opinion. If you can cover a couple of courts, maybe 4 courts with a structure with no lighting, it would really enhance the opportunity to play during the day. Understood that it wouldn't take you into the evening, but I'm not sure that's necessary anyway. And it would provide shade, during the summer on a couple of courts.
Mhm.
So my input.
I don't disagree with your input.
Thoughts about parking layout?
I certainly like the parking layout that does not remove those trees, simply because those trees are a very helpful sound barrier to the neighbors. Knowing that we're going to have the old click and clack of paddles on pickleballs. And you also get 9 more spaces. If you look at concept 1, we leave more of that green barrier there for sound, wanting to be sensitive to that to the neighbors. But again, it's not a hill I'm going to die on or anything. However, it seems to make more sense.
May I add to that thought, please? The option, concept 1 that you're looking at right now, not only does it maintain the vegetative barrier between the residents, it also provides an area between the pickleball courts and the vegetation for us to stockpile spoils from grading the courts, and that also helps then build a berm or increase the berm that's there for even more potential soundproofing.
Yeah, you don't see it from the overhead, but we do have
Yeah.
from a berm area raised up here. So the courts are sort of inset in, and that'll help a lot with the sound pollution spillover.
Do we have any other comments, questions?
In case you didn't hear, those were 2 mutters for 1 as well.
Yeah, I think we all kind of are in agreement that option 1. I think we're all kind of in agreement that option 1 seems like preferable for us.
Good, and as I mentioned earlier, we will find out from the city what impact on the right-of-way that has, and if it's possible. So that's where Brian will have that answer for you.
It follows pretty closely with the same alignment setback as the rest of the parking lot from the right-of-way. So
Yes.
I'm hoping it's minimal.
It just happens to, you can kind of see it, it just happens to cut across because of the intersection. And in the future, if that becomes an entrance to the park, or we look at that as a potential entrance to the park, that's another question we want to propose to the city, because we want them to tell us what the potential roadblocks are to making that an entrance. So we're kind of covering our bases for the future at the same time.
Okay. Do you need any recommendation on this or action at this time?
I don't know that we need a formal, actually, we're still in pre-app, but we did want to give you guys feedback. But if you do want to make a motion of, and just let us know, hey, we as a body feel that this is the preferred option, and a reason why we like this setup around both the layout of the courts and the proposed parking. Yeah. Oh, yeah, and shelter change, yeah.
Will there be another option for public input? It doesn't appear so.
Oh. Yeah, Don, you want to talk about next steps after the pre-app meeting?
Well, then, my understanding is our next steps after the pre-app meeting, we want to, at least for the layout of the courts, we want to get started with the courts stay where they are, regardless of what we do with the fencing. If the courts stay where they are, and we say don't do the parking or consider the parking between the courts and the residences, then we can start getting ready to we can start on construction drawings, because fencing, as far as fencing and windscreens and things like that, we can talk about those and find out what the options are, and those can change right up until we go in for permitting. but we need to go ahead and get the grading and the stormwater and all the construction drawings taken care of, and we need to get our permits in hand and get a construction-ready set of documents. I'm trying to remember, and my memory escapes me, on if we have another public meeting or not. And Brian, you'll have to help me on that.
Yeah, I'll look here. So I guess to answer your question, it really is, do we feel that we need another feedback, input session, open house, whatever, from the public as far as the court layout? Or do you feel like this commission can take the feedback that we've gotten so far, make a determination, yes, we want to move forward with this court layout, we'll go forward with that, and then we can come back with, I think once we have the funding that notice and we know how much money we have to work with, we can give a lot more information on the options that are available as add-ons. But that doesn't really change the structural schematics of where the courts are, what Don's talking about with construction drawings, I don't think.
I don't know if we need another meeting for, a public meeting for this. Do we? I think most of the concerns that aren't covered by this were in regards to like lighting and, you know, covering the structure and stuff like that. I could be wrong, and I don't want to sound like an autocrat, but I think we could bypass it for now.
If I might add to that, the key, one of the key items in this layout, neighbors. In this layout, we're 54 feet from the fence or the various fences that run behind the residences. I would prefer not to move any closer. And the only thing that would have us move any closer would be if we widened the distance between in the court, between the two courts and the central, the center dividing fence. So we are comfortable as your consultant recommending that this is the layout that we certainly feel should go forward, but we will take direction as needed.
So you kind of see here, we're at the of bringing back the second iteration of these designs. How much you want to move forward in public engagement is your choice.
It seems to me that unless we have dollar amounts associated to added amenities, it might not be the best use of time. If we had price tags that would be associated with the publicly interested add-ons, then it would be a good time to have another communication, because cost is going to jump pretty significantly, and then people would be better equipped to have, I think, the next round of input, knowing the cost-benefit analysis of some of these extra amenities and add-ons.
Yeah, I don't personally see a need for another public comment meeting. I assume somewhere along the line, once you get this more finalized, the construction drawings, et cetera, that will go out to the public in some form, that we're moving this project along, and here's what it's going to look like. And you'll probably get some comment on that, whether you ask for it or not. But I think most of the people are going to be just fine with it. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. Doesn't have to be formal.
I would agree that pricing is the significant next issue.
So it seems to me that maybe a motion to just say that our recommended plan at this point is concept one, for the reason of we like how the courts are laid out. We like being able to keep the green buffer between the neighbors. We like having the ability to add to the berm, and we like the location of the parking and how it looks, continuing the continuity of the parking lot and having 9 more spaces than the other option.
Yeah, and that effectively moves us from a 30% design to a 95% design phase.
Correct.
Because then we can get construction drawings and get price tags, right? And I think that's where we need to be.
That's correct.
Okay. Do we need a formal motion, or is that recommendation good enough?
Yes, let's make it a formal motion.
All right, go for it.
I move that we recommend concept one for all the reasons previously listed. Good parking, green space, berm. Let's go.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes unanimously.
I have one other question while we got you, Don, if I may. How are things proceeding in South Whidbey?
We have our pre-application meeting 2 days after yours, and we're at approximately the same point.
Thank you.
Well, I want to thank the commission for your time and I take what you recommended as direction, if that's agreeing with you, Brian.
Yep. Thank you, Don.
All right, thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to item E, Flintstone Park reconfiguration.
Okay. So we are working with RAM to get a construction schedule together. We'd like to do a groundbreaking ceremony, just to kind of keep it small with the Parks and Recreation Commission and the Arts Commission for the Angel of Creativity statue. Let me pull up a little site map here so we can have some discussion. Let's use. While I'm pulling this up, I'll say on the 28th, we'll be coming to council during their August workshop to talk about the reconfiguration of the park. And Beth Munns, who's a community member that works quite a bit with our military and does a number of events with them, we'll be talking about a proposal to rededicate the Naval Flagstaff on Veterans Day, relocating it to the Veterans Memorial Park just down the street, and redo that plaque. Regardless of if we move that over, we'll still have a flagpole at the park. Let's see. This is going to be a little bit of an older one, but it'll serve for our purposes here.
Oh, there you go. That's a good.
Okay. So the sculpture is going to. You get the idea, basically about here. So it will require the reconfiguration of this roundabout, and the proposal is that we remove the roundabout asphalt from about here with the entrance for the condos. Removing the parking, removing the roundabout all here, we'll sod that all in, but we'll expand this parking lot area up here so we don't lose too much parking in the park there, but we'll have a lot more green space to work with. The proposal also is, as I mentioned, to relocate the Naval Flagstaff up to the Veterans Memorial Park, which is a suitable location for that. I believe that Veterans Memorial was created after the Flagstaff was put here in Flintstone Park, but seems more appropriate location. And then We will keep I don't know, I'll put it, kind of a drive path in for the hydros. I mean, people drive all over this park during that event anyway, so I'm not sure it really matters a whole lot, but we will make sure that for the extra weight, we have a good carry through into this location. They usually stage right here, and they're pulling the hydros all along here. We went out this last year just to look at their setup, just to make sure that the statue wasn't going to interfere with any of that operation, and it doesn't look like it'll make any impact to it. They'll just go around it, stage around it, just like they do the current flag staff. So like I mentioned, August 28th will be the workshop, and we'll just have a discussion about it and say, hey, here's the proposal. Give us your feedback on what you think about this concept of removing the roundabout, of relocating the flag staff, and get council's thoughts before we do a formalized site plan that we take to development services. But we wanted to have a discussion with you and get some of your thoughts on the reconfiguration of this. We already have the funding set aside for it. So funding's not an issue. It's just what's going to be the preferred method. A couple things. So let me also talk a little bit about the reason we went with this reconfiguration, because we had talked about several, including just cutting off the parking lot here and just removing this portion. Development Services came back with concerns about doing that, in that it would cause cars to have to back up and then exit through here. We would have widened this entry point a little bit, but that would shine headlights into the condos here, and they kind of wanted to avoid that. I'm guessing there was some discussion previously about how we set this up and why it's a roundabout, so that they wouldn't have headlights going into the residential there. So the thought of just expanding the parking and increasing parking stall capacity up here, and then removing everything else to the south was the proposed solution for that.
So you said there's still going to be a flagpole.
Yeah,
Where will that be?
yeah,
In the
we'll
same
probably,
way?
yeah, we'll probably locate it over by the parking here, near the entrance to the park.
So will there be the same number of parking spaces altogether then?
We'll have to have engineering help us with the quantity. That's the intent, is to bring the parking all the way down to where this landscape area would go away, bring the parking all the way down to there. I think we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We might have one less parking space. We want to make sure we have ADA parking in there as well. But
Okay, thank you.
Just a comment. It's unfortunate that you lose the parking facing the water, because there's a lot of people that like that. I fully understand the dynamics of it, just a comment.
Any
yeah, there's
other-
we're not going to come to something that solves everything without some kind of a con to it. So it's a little bit of a give and take, which is why we wanted to have these discussions. Get your thoughts, see what you think.
Any other thoughts, comments, questions? Okay, do you need any formal recommendation?
If you don't have any issues or any other concerns, or those concerns are not enough to sway your support of that reconfiguration plan, which basically would remove the whole roundabout and the landscaping and expand the parking, and I'd probably go ahead and include the relocation of and rededication of the flagstaff with that. If that's agreeable to the commission and something that you would like to send to council as your recommendation as well, yes, we'd ask for a formal motion stating that, and we'll share that with council.
Is there any projected damage to the walking path through construction?
No, that doesn't change the walking path at all.
Okay. Then I don't have any problem with it as it is. All right, I recommend that we go ahead and move forward with the plan as drawn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, that passes unanimously. Okay, moving on to item F, skate park project.
So Stefania was going to take this one. She's not here.
Yeah.
I'll give what information I have for it. So we met on site with our Parks Committee and some of the arts. I think it was our public art placement committee, as well as the county juvenile court staff, and talked about the skate park. The plan is for Parks to do some power washing cleanup of the area, and then they are planning for a volunteer cleanup event, which really is painting. They're going to get a specialized skate park paint to paint over all the current graffiti at the skate park. And that will set it up basically as a canvas for a street art project. So wipe it all down, we'll clean it up, we'll paint all over it, and then they're going to put in purposely placed street art. And that is set for Saturday, September 28th from 10 o'clock a.m. to 2 o'clock p.m. This is very much a community proposal. The Art Commission has been talking about this project for quite a while. We have the skate park renovation as a capital project in 2027 with about, I think we have $68,000 or so for that. The Art Commission wants to go forward with this as a community and in-kind service project. As far as just the cleanup and placement of new street art, we will keep the capital project for 2027 for repairs of areas where the cement has broken up. You can see on the donor wall, which has inscribed stones that are inlaid into the wall. Some of those have come off on the side. We'll repair that, as well as address any safety issues in the park. One of the proposals that came out but would not be part of this cleanup art project is also a discussion around removing the exterior fencing. Pros and cons to that, probably something we'll want to discuss in our Parks Committee. But that would be for the 2027 project.
Any questions, comments? Okay.
And we should meet again before this event, so
Yeah.
I'm sure Stefania will come forward with
Yeah.
all of her presentation and excitement for it, and we'll talk about what's been set up for it.
Okay, sounds good. So let's go ahead and move on to item G, Rec Center feasibility study and Centralia site visit.
So appreciate everyone that attended the Centralia site visit. While I pull up kind of our notes from that, I'll just turn it over to those that attended and let you kind of give your thoughts on it.
It was Tom, me, Counselor Marshall, Brandon, and Brian, so it was a nice group, and we saw the facility complex, I guess would be the word for it, and then we did see a couple of accessible playgrounds on our way back up as well. Tom, I don't know if you had any comments about the facility first.
Yeah, I thought it was a worthwhile trip. It was a long trip, but it was good to converse on the way down and the way back, as in addition to seeing the facilities. I think it's always good to get inside of other departments and how they handle management of ball fields, for example, we spent a lot of time on that. The sports hub itself was discouraging from the standpoint that they were very unwelcoming. but at least I got a chance to walk through the door and see the big area. Unfortunately, we couldn't see the outside area that had volleyball courts and pickleball courts, but I have a better idea of what that looks like just walking in the main facility. So other than that, I thought it was a worthwhile trip. It was good for me personally to see the playgrounds, and quite a bit of difference between like an old school done some years ago and one that was done more recently. Anyway, encouraging, very encouraging and optimistic for what I think we can get here. Thanks. And thanks for driving, Brian.
Eric, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah, no, I thought it was a definitely a worthwhile trip and be able to get to hear what they would do differently, you know, in the event of those fields. And tell you, that guy at the sports complex, he's not very nice. But that's just my opinion. But it was good to be able to spend the time with you guys.
So we took quite a few pictures of the visit, as well as we're putting together a report for administration on just kind of lessons learned. We'll attempt this. This is going pretty slow with loading things, but we'll see how this works. Let's see. So Centralia is an interesting project. So half of it is owned by the city, half of it's owned by the school district. The facility, the indoor facility, is this joint venture between the city, a county public facility district, the school district, and a private entity that manages it. Although it seems the private entity has all control. It's definitely not open to the public. They don't have a public entrance. They keep it specifically as private rentals. Both the city and the school district sides of the complex, the ball fields are mostly on the city side, with soccer fields and some additional ball fields on the school district side. They're both going through improvement projects where they'll be putting in turf in the infields, leaving the outfields as naturalized grass. And both those projects are being funded by grants. It'll be interesting to go back and see the final product of that. Centralia is a fairly small city. They have a very limited staff, maintenance staff, that are definitely overworked. It's a city in transition. Just a lot of the same things we hear here, as well as a lot of other cities. You know, a lot of municipalities kind of went through the recession in 2008, and we're just kind of in this hold pattern with a lot of their capital projects, especially like maintenance projects. And recreational facilities tended to be the very last on the list to get updated. And that correlated with a lot of facilities coming past useful life by the time we get to now, where they're in dire need of updates. Definitely a lot of, I think, lessons learned on what we would want to avoid with outdoor facilities, and maybe some cautionary tales as far as like how we partner with indoor facilities. We also, like was mentioned, stopped by Penny Playground in an adjacent city. This is a really good example of what we're looking for with an inclusive playground. So these are what the donation recognition mechanism is for the park. You see the name, and these are here on the fence, and all the donors have a penny that is attached to the fence there. I like the kind of the welcome entrance to this park. Definitely identifies it as a destination point. We also stopped by another example of sort of an older inclusive playground that had pour in place. You can see some of that pour in place surfacing starting to break up. Let me go back here. This is a couple shots from the indoor facility of the sports hub, multiple court facility, and then they also have some pickleball courts on the other side here in a separate build out. And their football stadium. This is at the Centralia College. We had a very nice gentleman, the vice president of student services, that led us onto the field to take a look at it. All turf field, multi-use field. They had directional lighting that was actually quite remarkable. Was claiming that, from across the street, you have residential right there on the other side of the street, and the lighting stays on the field. It's dark on the other side of the street. So definitely something we want to look at for any future ball field lighting that we do, especially around Windjammer that has adjacent residential. So this is a multi-use field that had soccer field layout, softball, and baseball. You couldn't really use them all at once though, but it was a flex use space. Real nice facility. It's not really showing the full pictures, but we had an example of the communications board. This is getting cut off, but we have better pictures. We'll share with you guys with the site visit report. And then our shot of those donation recognition coins that are attached to the fence outside of the playground. Just kind of a fun idea and getting the community involved. And they have this QR code here you could also access. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of lessons learned from the Centralia site visit. Definitely probably more on what to avoid and make sure that we don't do in our planning efforts. I would like to continue to do a couple of field trips, maybe a little closer to home. This was pretty far away, a little over 3 hours. It took all day for us to do, but we do have other, especially Florida indoor sport facilities and indoor recreational centers in the region that I'd like to go and visit as well. So for those that weren't able to join us on the site visit, don't worry, we'll have other opportunities, and we'll probably be scheduling those pretty soon. We are bringing the feasibility study to council at the workshop on the 28th as well. And we'll just be talking about the scope with them. Let me pull up what is going to them. We have a lot of stuff that we finished up after the agenda went out, so we weren't able to get all this stuff to you guys, but I'll share it here.
What are you going to bring forward to the council on the feasibility study?
Say that again?
What are you going to bring forward to the council on the feasibility study?
Here, I'll show you.
I thought we were going to discuss that more in our own workshop as far as what should be included or not included, the scope.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've had some discussion with our Athletic Facilities Commission. So this is the presentation we'll be giving to council based off what we talked about in the Sports Facilities Committee. Just talking about the 2,000 we received through the capital appropriations budget through the state. Talk a little bit about the community support that kind of drove this process. Would be royalty a big part of that? In fact, we'll probably work with you guys on coming help present this item. a little bit about the project overview. And so this is what the scope that we're going to talk about with council is. Project overview, market analysis, citizen participation plan, programming, site analysis, conceptual layout and design, operations analysis, economic impact projections, project capital cost estimate, partnerships, and then project funding analysis, and then the final report. Anticipated timeline could be 4 to 2 years, 4 months to 2 years, depending on the scope and what the desire is to roll this immediately into an implementation and construction. Talk a little bit about the makeup of the feasibility study committee that will go forward to finalize the RFP that's to go out, made up of our Parks and Recreation Commission. We would recommend 2 liaisons from City Council, 3 citizens that have a lot of interest in this, as well as our staff as needed. This is a little bit about the financials as far as the range that we're expecting, and this is going to be on the more conservative high end. I think when the administration asked me about this, we were looking at about 30,000 to 85,000. That could be as high as maybe 120,000, depending on what we include. We were conservative and gave ourselves a little bit of a buffer, and the state gave us everything we asked for, 200. That's going to be well and away probably more than we're going to need for the feasibility study. So we'll probably have some discussion on, well, what else can we include into this to get as much value out as possible and make sure that the state feels like, for the investment they put into the city, we have something great with this. And that could include everything from a little more of the conceptual site plans to some preliminary concept drawings. It could be including bid management to help with bid documents for the engineering designs, or even to set up a bid for construction. Could help with funding activities and different things like that. So there's a lot of other things that we could put into this. So this presentation really is going to just be talking to council about the feasibility study, how we're going to plan on going forward with it, a little bit of the timeline, what the makeup of the committee that's going to help us finalize the draft of this and do the reviews and make a selection. That'll all come back to council once we made a selection on the RFP to do the study. And yeah, I think that's it. Any questions or comments? Yeah.
Okay, so just so I'm clear on like what it means, so this is gonna go to council, and then if they approve it, that means like the RFP is in like process, like immediately?
Yeah, so this will be a workshop. It's just a discussion item. There's no formal action from council, but we do want to get their head nod and their feedback on, yes, this is what we would like to include in the scope of this study, right? So we'll take all that feedback from council, any comments they have on what they would like to see or what they would not like to see. There's been talk about, well, what else could we include in this feasibility study? Should it just be a recreation center? Do we want to make sure we have both indoor and outdoor athletic facilities included in that? Should a performing arts center be as part of that feasibility study for inclusion of design or not? A lot of different things we can do with this, especially with the amount of money that we have. So we just want to get that feedback, and then we'll meet as a committee that's working on the RFP to finalize that scope, and then put that request for proposal out for bids.
Do you know who's going to be on the committee?
Like I said, we have a recommendation that right now we have the athletic fields committee that has been having these preliminary discussions. I'd like to make a formalized feasibility study committee that will review those proposals, and that'll be made up from whoever we want as the commission. It could be the whole commission. We'll just have to notify those meetings. A couple people from council, a few people from just the community at large, and then staff. So if you have thoughts on should the whole commission be involved in that process, or would you like to assign it to one of the committees, love to hear that feedback as well.
I would kind of like to see the whole commission be a part of that conversation. I think it's good that the subcommittees are kind of diving in deeper to the minutia, but I think it'd be nice to have everybody on the commission a part of that conversation. I don't know if anyone agrees or disagrees.
Yeah, I don't really have an opinion one way or the other, but I think Carrie's point is valid, and I do think it's one of the big things that we're going to do probably in our term, so it might be beneficial for as many good voices, and we have a lot of them here, to be involved in that.
So this is kind of a long-term question, but so let's say this goes to council and they like figure like exactly what they want. When's the soonest it'll be like put forward as an RFP and then it can get like in process? Like, would that happen? Like, could it be like the council meeting right after the workshop? Like, how long does it usually take for people like to figure out what we want? Like,
Well, we've already done a lot of the preliminary work.
Yeah.
So once we know what we want to put into that scope, we already have the details for each of those scope items. So we'll probably have one committee meeting. Once council gives the feedback, I'll just go ahead and make a draft. And then we'll have one committee meeting to go over that, refine that, tweak it a little bit. Maybe two if we need to spill that over into 2 meetings. Once everyone agrees from that committee that, okay, yes, this is what we want to include in this, the scope and the deliverables that we want out of this study, then that can go out. You can expect probably about 3 weeks to a month before we get the proposals to review and grade those with the committee. We will probably get those proposals, look through them, make a selection of the top ones, and then do interviews with them and presentations. So give another 2 weeks out for that, make a selection, and then work on a agreement. We'll negotiate that. That'll be like, 3 weeks or so, and then we'll bring that back to council to sign that agreement. So I would anticipate October, maybe November.
huh? Gotcha. That's a long time. Wow.
Yeah. Government does not move quickly.
Yeah.
And it's not just us, right? We need enough time for these firms to prepare these proposals, for them to prepare presentations, to negotiate agreements. There's a lot back and forth. And we have a procurement process that dictates on the city side how that goes as well.
Okay. I do have one more question. So, as like the Mr. Carver Club, we have like a petition going online. We got like 100 signatures so far, and that's like meant to be something to like show at like, cause like once the like long term, once the feasibility study gets like passed and like there's an actual plan, that has to go back to council to like vote on it.
Yeah,
again,
so
right?
there will be a final report. Everything comes out of the feasibility study of this is what you need in your community. This is what the cost of it's going to be. This is the recommendations on how you fund that. This is the location that it should be. This is what it should be in it. All that kind of goes to council. We have a little bit of discussion. I would hope that at that point, when we do that, we also have some solutions we bring forward to them that they can then say, yes, we like this, we adopt this, we want to go forward on this path to implementation. And we have some options forward on how to do that.
Yeah. How many signatures do you think we should aim for? I know the feasibility study does like public input with like the random mailing or whatever they do. I read that on the Provo one where they like mailed people randomly to ask, but like, do you think there should be like a goal we should aim for, or do you think the petition's just...
As far as public support of implementing and building the recreation center, the more you get, the better, right? I mean, it all goes to council, right? So council is the voice of the people, and so you need to give your voice to council and let them see that, yes, this is the community's desire on how they would want to move forward. We'll also have public comment, so, whether that petition signature or letters of support, public comment, all those things help inform council on making a decision in the direction that they want to go as far as implementing. There's no point doing I'm not in the business of doing studies that are just for information, right? Everything I do as far as planning has a very has a very quick rollover into implementing. Council just needs us to work on removing any barriers to how to go forward with that. So we try not to bring problems to council. We just hear solutions, pick the best one that you like. So that conversation is going to be where that public comment and show of public support will be important, to say, hey, we agree with this, or we like this, or we don't like this, and this is what we would like council to do.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. I think we're ready then to move on to item H, fall activity guide.
I'll share my screen here. So I sent out the list of just programs that are going to be planned for to be included in the activity guide. We're looking at covers for the activity guide right now as well. We'll be highlighting the marina, which will be celebrating its 50th year anniversary next month. We're also planning a public event around that, and so that'll be included in the activity guide. Here's a couple of ideas for the cover of it. Just different layouts, different photos. We just sent those programs to Would Be Weekly to do the mock-up. They'll be working on that now. Liz is out this week, so she wasn't able to come to speak to where we're at with it. I'll just point out, that's my son Carter. Did the youth sailing program over the summer. Had a great time. We have you'll see we have quite a few new programs in there. We'll just about effectively be doubling our programs each activity guide over the next year. When we get back into spring next year, we'll be adding in adult sports programming as well as day camps. And that's all I really have to share on that. Any questions or comments as far as the activity guide? I will, maybe as part of that, just give also an update that we have the artist agreement signed for the new mascot and visuals for Ollie. We have a timeline for that as well. We'll be getting conceptual designs and doing some feedback, probably with the programs committee, which has both the Arts Commission and the Parks and Recreation Commission as part of that in September. And then she'll be working on that and then bring back final drafts in October. As soon as we have something final, we'll bring that to the commission just for adoption and I guess formal, all right, this is going to be the Parks and Recreation mascot going forward. We'll have a mascot costume that's created after that, as well as wrapping the Parks and Recreation bus for our travel programs. And we'll be using it on all of our marketing material and pretty heavily in the activity guide. You saw in the last one, we had kind of a placeholder Ollie mascot in there, along with some kid activities and things like that. And you'll see something similar in this activity guide as well. But that'll get formalized probably starting in the winter, spring activity guide.
Okay, great. Any questions, comments on that? All right. Let's move on to item I, subcommittee updates. Programs and events did not meet. And then our parks and playgrounds, we really just met with Ray and kind of went over Howard Valley ordinance information, so it wasn't really, there's not much to report on that one, I guess, either, so.
Most of I think our conversation last time was revolving around the site visit for Eric McCabe for Freedom Park. And then we went on some bushwhacking expeditions up there to kind of see what next, what it's going to look like. As far as where we're at in that planning, I believe staff will be creating some opportunity for greater access and visibility out there because it is pretty thick. Eric McCabe is working on some preliminary ideas, and we'll be back, I think, in December for another site visit when it'll be easier to get a rough draft or greater than that for where we're going to go, and then to proceed with, cutting and removing of underbrush when it's easier, when it's not in full leaf and all of that stuff. So good progress. And I think, we got a lot of figuring out done in the bushwhacking process out there. And so that's really it. It's, it's going to be figuring out where entrance to the park is going, and then that will determine a lot of the flow. And I don't know if there's anything else that needs added after that. Brian, do you have anything on that?
No, I like how we kind of casually talk about all these amazing things that are going on. But yeah, so pickleball courts are well underway, doing the pre-app meeting. Like you mentioned, site visit is scheduled for December 2nd, tentatively right now. And Parks will be working on clearing access roads around the perimeter and then connecting all the way through to the other side of the current access road that goes from Gun Club. We'll take it all the way to the other side of the property for that perimeter access road. And and then the site visit that we had. So, like I said, we'll be putting together a report on that, and then, like I said, on the 28th workshop, talking about the feasibility study and Veterans Memorial reconfiguration. So, a lot going on. I will add to that. I should have said it earlier. So you could probably expect for the feasibility study committee, if we do want to do the whole commission rather than just the athletics fields committee, you can expect probably about 10 meetings between the draft meetings, the review, and then working with the consultants before we bring back for the final presentation, which you would be involved with as well. So.
Sorry for the lack of enthusiasm. No, it's exciting out there. I just want to temper expectations that it's not ready to be explored yet, but once we get some more in, it's going to be a phenomenal resource and place to play for the community.
Okay, any other comments for that item? All right, let's go ahead and move on to item J. Did you emailed out that information?
Right, yeah, so I knew we'd probably be a bit over time, and I'll just add to, I did send out a department report to you guys, and you can look through that. Let me know if you have any questions. That's a pretty good summary of kind of what's been going on and around some of the new programming as well. Our staff did do the A6 cleanup on Friday with Naval volunteers. We are doing RCO grant presentations to the Recreation Conservation Office with the state this week, today, and on Wednesday for the WWRP grant, which is for the ball fields, and the LWCF grant, which is for the inclusive playground. And then we'll be talking about fee schedules around our facility rental fees, league fees, and park reservations and things like that, probably in our committee meetings coming up this month. So I'll send out some information around that. Otherwise, everything else should be in that report. Do you have anything you want to share, Brandon?
The Windjammer ball fields are wrapped up. They look great. We're out there hand watering right now. Play chips are done. We've exhausted our reserve of play chips, so that will That's done for this year. We have, I think it's $65 per cubic yard allotment in there if we choose to go and do more. We do have that option to do that. I think there's a two-year, that's good for 2 years. Other than that, we've got I haven't gotten a chance to read through it yet, but we've got the Moff and Nickel review for the lagoon dock and the bridge, Flintstone Pier. So I'm going to have to read through that and see what that is. I think that's it. Working on budget stuff.
Okay, thank you. All right, next item is member comments. Do we have any comments?
Yeah, Brian, we got your list on what you're bringing to the workshop as far as just highlights of what's happening. Can you just make that a matter of routine and just copy us on that as well? Because we don't get to the council workshops.
Yeah, absolutely. The timing is a little weird because we usually don't have it. Well, we have it right about this time for the council packet, which is after we usually try to get our packet for this meeting done. But I'll see if we can get it done a little bit earlier to include it in your packet. But if not, I have no problem emailing it out to you guys for sure.
Yeah, I'm not asking you to do anything additional, just copy us on the
Yeah, you bet.
distribution. I have one other item, and we're already past our 2 hours, but it would just be a discussion item because I'm not real clear on how we should handle certain things as a commission here. Just a couple of examples from today. The communication presentation by Maggie was great, but that requires a lot of discussion with us. And how do we pursue that? I mean, I didn't bring anything up because that could be a 2-hour discussion on communications. So I assume she'll probably, that's just one example. I assume she'll come back or we'll somehow communicate with her again. And then the Imagine group came in, and it's like, I'm totally in the dark. I mean, I know where it is. I've looked at it, but I don't know the background on it. I didn't know we had a formal, so in other words, if we're being asked to make some kind of a recommendation, I personally am not in a place where I could do that because I don't feel like I have enough background information. I think another issue similar to that, larger in scale, was the ordinance 1999 that we discussed briefly, and I had no background on it. So we voted on it, and then I learned more about it during the council meeting after that. So I guess even the feasibility study, it's like, to what degree do we handle it now as a commission and talk about it, or pass it off to one of our own workshops, or find some other way to do it? I guess I just don't feel like I'm totally prepared to make a decision or even a recommendation on some things.
Yeah, and so all these items you're talking about are the reasons why we created these committees, but we don't have everyone on every committee, right? So, like for instance, with Imagine, we invited the Parks and Playgrounds Committee, I think it was, to attend that site visit with Imagine, to learn a little more about the permaculture and what they have set up. As far as Ordinance 1999, that's not our item, that's Development Services. And we got, you have as much information as I do from what Ray presented on that. Same thing with like communications, like I would assign that to a committee, but maybe that goes to just a little more of, how do we better give that discussion, what happens in those discussion items in the committees to the rest of the commission, right? Leading up to our commission meetings.
Well, I bring it up just as a discussion. I'm not pertinent to any one particular topic. I'll go with the flow. But it's just, I guess, an information thing.
Council feels that pain all the time, right? They have things
Well,
brought
I
to them and
noticed
then
on
have
the
to make a
council,
decision to kind of
the council
turn around.
doesn't get into discussions. They get public input, they make their own comments, and if it's something that needs a vote, they'd take it. Do we have the same setup, or can we communicate in discussion format with anybody that comes in here? You understand what I'm saying? I think our our committees are great. I think we get a lot done there, and there's a lot of discussion.
Yeah, and those committee meetings act as kind of the same format like that the council workshops have. It's just we have you guys broken up rather than having you all as one body. If you'd rather, we could do a workshop setup with everyone. We just have to notify it. And if you want to do that, it's going to be a lot of items if we don't have it broken up. But I'm happy whatever you guys want to do, whatever's going to help you best work through these things and get you the information to make recommendations to council and really get into the depth of the issue.
Well, I just bring it up as a discussion item. Maybe we can think about it, talk more about it at our next meeting if it requires it. But anyway, I'll leave it at that.
It sounded like Maggie was going to come back at our next meeting with more of a plan for communication. So my understanding is we can kind of brainstorm and share those ideas with Maggie either before that meeting or at that meeting. But I think that will help address, because this is kind of what prompted our conversation initially about communications. So I think that hopefully with Maggie's help, we can kind of address those processes that we have in place so that everybody feels like they're well informed before we have to make any official recommendations. As far as public comment, I think it's up to us how we want to handle it. We don't have to handle it like city council does. We're like today, we can have a back and forth dialogue. Am I correct, Mikhail?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's my understanding, right?
Yeah.
Is we can,
Yeah, there's no rules about it.
Right.
That typically you don't engage in the conversation because your meetings can get really long. It's not something on the agenda, so it's best to put it on an agenda and notice it if you're gonna,
Sure.
but you can ask questions.
Yeah, we can respond, whereas city council cannot. Correct, okay.
Well, my antenna went up a little bit when you started talking about the feasibility study and whether the discussion should involve the entire commission. I would love for it to do that. But as you know from committee work, we could spend hours, talking about details of what the feasibility study should be. It just seems like it'd be easier to attack in a committee, but I don't want to. I think the whole commission should be involved, so I'm just not sure what the answer is.
And some of these items we can have on all the committee meet, like the communications item. That's an item that we can have for discussion with each of the committees individually as well.
Okay, any other member comments? Okay, that brings us to determination of future agenda items. One of the agenda items, I assume, will be the communications with Maggie back presenting for us. Are there any other future agenda items at this point that we would like to add? No? Okay, so does anyone have any other questions, comments, discussion? All right, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting then. Thank you, everybody.